We are all different, even at the neuron level. Some of us are neurodivergent, which this may include being in the autism spectrum. Earlier, I spoke to Ms. Nehat about autism to understand it better and what it is. So today, on the same lines, I am talking to another amazing person, Ms. Janani Prakash, on autism intervention. Ms. Janani is a registered behavior technician. She provides behavior therapy to children with special needs. Ms. Janani is a master's in psychology and currently working with the Center for Children with Special Needs. Welcome, Ms. Janani.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. So before we hop on to any questions, I would like you to briefly introduce yourself.
Well, I think you did a great job of doing that. But I will just say the same thing again. I have a master's in psychology. It's something I thought would be really beneficial on my journey to working with children and helping them just be the best versions of themselves. After I got my master's in psychology, I kind of graduated just a little before COVID. So COVID hit and basically sat at home like most of us. And I was trying to figure out what to do, something that would really help me further my career and my passion to work with children. And I came across something called behavior therapy. It was something that we learned about back at work, in college. But we don't really learn a big part of it. And I got quite interested in it. And I got myself certified with the board for behavior analysis. And I am right now a registered behavior technician.
Amazing, Ms. Janani. So now let's start with our questions. You work with autistic children every day. So what is the most enjoyable part of your job?
You know, a lot of people ask me this and they say, oh, Janani, you must have so much patience. But I don't think you need a lot of patience when you do something you really love. Uh, and I've always enjoyed working with children. I love talking to them. I know I have a lot of fun talking to you, Pragya, every time we meet. Uh, the thing about children with special needs on the spectrum, anything of that sort, is they've all got these unique personalities. Every single one of them is different, and they've got this spark in them which they need, just need someone to notice. And I like to think that I'm able to notice that, and they always keep me on my toes. They keep me on my toes, and that is what I love about anyone that I speak to. I want you to keep me on my toes, to challenge me, and I know that they bring out the best version of me, and that's why I love working with them.
This sounds so inspiring to me. I'm so keen to learn more about it, which we will in this further interview. What motivated you to be a special needs teacher?
To be very honest, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Uh, but when I did my undergrad back in India, we have these compulsory internships that you have to do to complete your degree. So I did those when I came on my vacation here back to Dubai. And I did my internships in a couple of special needs schools in and around the UAE. And I just loved what I was doing. I would travel by public transport from Sharjah to Dubai. I would spend 2 hours traveling, but I wanted to do it. I love doing it, and I realized that this is really, really what I want to do. So I would probably give all the credit to the internships that I got to do in Dubai Autism Center and Al Noor Training Center in Al Basra. Uh, that's what made me want to work with children who are on the spectrum and have any special needs.
That's that's so beautiful. What are the different type of interventions for special needs children?
So when you look at it from an intervention point of view, you have so many different methods to help children with special needs. But it's also very important to understand that it's not just one thing that is going to help the child. For example, what I do is something called behavior therapy, right? This specific form of therapy works on skill acquisition and behavior reduction. So we work on developing skills for the children and children with any kind of, uh, let's say, different behavior. And we try to get to calm them down or just help them manage their behavior. Our job is to find out why they're behaving the way they are and help them manage it accordingly. But that's just one aspect of it. Another two other very, very important aspects, two other very important interventions that are really required for children on the spectrum or with any other need is speech therapy and occupational therapy. Now, I am not an expert in either field, but we do work very closely and hand in hand with speech therapists and occupational therapists, to say the least. Speech therapists specifically work on linguistic processing and any kind of speech deficit. So this could be because of developmental delays or any other condition that the child might have. Occupational therapy is to help with the child's movement. It's similar to physiotherapy, but it helps more or less with fine motor skills. It helps you with your daily living skills. The motor skills required to live your daily life independently and easily is what an occupational therapist does. So I work very closely with speech therapists, occupational therapists, and the psychologist. Now, the first step for any kind of intervention is to get your child assessed. So your psychologist comes in and they conduct a barrage of assessments. And these assessments really help us diagnose the child, identify their needs specifically and accurately, so that we can proceed accordingly and come up with what we usually call an individualized educational plan, or an ITEP, an individualized therapy educational plan, which will consist of all the details and all the necessities that the child requires from a therapy and an educational perspective. So, to cut the long story short, when you look at interventions, the main things would be a psychologist for assessment, a behavior therapist for behavior reduction and skill acquisition, a speech therapist, and occupational therapist. These are the four primary ones.
Mm, that's amazing to hear. Actually, in a couple of my in a couple of my classes, I had a couple of neurodivergent children in my class earlier, and I've seen how different teachers work with them. It's so great to see how they make learning so enjoyable and better for them. How do you support children joining mainstream learning?
So I worked in a center, a couple of centers in the beginning of my career, and right now I do work closely with a mainstream school. And it's very, very important for children to feel accepted. From what we've noticed, uh, these children, when they go into a mainstream classroom, it makes sense that it's difficult for them to keep up with their peers and whatever is being taught. But it is also very important at the same time for them to be accepted from a social perspective.
Yeah.
So what we have noticed is that a lot of mainstream teachers prepare the children to for the neurodivergent child that is coming to their class. And when that happens, when a teacher prepares their class, the children in her class for the child that is coming in, it really, really helps these children bond and make friends. And so I honestly believe acceptance begins at home and school.
Uh, that was very interesting to know about it in detail. Can you please explain how is the development approach different from the educational approach?
So when you look at the developmental approach, like I mentioned, we specifically work on things such as speech and behaviors, skill acquisition, and motor skills. The educational approach is something a special education teacher does. If you may have noticed in your schools, a lot of schools these days, especially in the UAE, because they really, really focus on inclusion, which is so important for children. You have SEN teachers, special education needs teachers. You need to get a separate qualification for that. And what SEN teachers do is tailor the education, tailor whatever is being taught in each class, the curriculum, to for each child. So every single education plan is tailor made per child.
Wow.
So these children who are receiving outside therapy for speech, for behavior, and for motor skills, when they come to school, it makes it a lot easier for them when the education plan for them is tailor made for them, so that they are still learning, even though it's not at the level of the children their age in that particular class. They are still learning, and this ensures that there are no barricades to their learning,
Okay.
and that it is tailor made for them, so that makes it easier for them to acquire the skills required to continue going to school.
Okay. How do you support children with psychological intervention?
So when you look into psychological intervention, like I said, any kind of intervention for a child with uh, special needs, for any neurodivergent children, it is a holistic approach that is very important for everyone to take. You don't just focus on getting one particular type of therapy, you ensure that the child has access to all the therapies that they require to help them grow holistically. From a psychological perspective, like I told you, it's the first step. You need your child to be assessed. A child without an assessment, it while you can work on skill acquisition, it's very important for your child to be assessed so that you know exactly what their needs are, so you can proceed accordingly. It's
Wow.
very simple, yeah. Because, for example, there is something called a CARS assessment, which is a childhood autism rating scale. So, when you suspect that the child has autism, you take them to a psychologist and they conduct this kind of assessment. So, this assessment will determine whether the child has autism and how severe or mild it is. At the same time, you also have something called cognitive behavior therapy, which is a kind of therapy that you need to be licensed and qualified in, which psychologists usually tend to be qualified in.
Wow.
And this is one of the types of therapy that you can provide neurodivergent individuals.
All right. So, what can other children in the classroom do? What other children in the classroom can do to encourage learning for neurodivergent kids?
I think one of the most crucial aspects of taking neurodivergent children and putting them in a mainstream classroom for inclusion purposes is not just for neurodivergent children to stay in mainstream classrooms, but also for neurotypical children in those classrooms to accept them. And I understand acceptance, especially for younger children, is could be a little scary.
Yeah.
You are not used to anyone who's different from you, and different is, it's scary. Change is scary. We we are afraid of things we don't understand. We are afraid of people we don't understand, which is why it's something that all schools must really focus on and teachers must focus on. But at the same time, we really need to ensure that that the neurodivergent child that we are bringing to the classroom is comfortable in that classroom. We don't usually take our children immediately to neurotypical classes. We ensure that they have acquired the skill set that they need to be in a classroom filled with neurotypical children. But it is very, very important to just observe these kids, understand their needs, not to overwhelm them, but still treat them the same. As children in your class, if you've got somebody who is neurodivergent, a little different from how you usually are, the simplest thing is to just observe them. You observe them and you will immediately know what they're comfortable with and what they're not. And as long as their peers are able to act accordingly, interact with them the way they are comfortable, this really, really helps these children.
Wow. I always try to learn how can I contribute. This is so brilliant to understand. We all have a role to play in schools and in homes. Do you think do you think these intervention methods help children significantly to be more independent?
Absolutely. The first core principles, everything that we try to do from the very beginning is to help the individual be independent. That's all we need. That's all we want. Anyone, even neurotypical children, what your parents need is for you to be independent. What my parents needed for me was for me to be independent. And that is how they try to bring us up. And that is exactly what we try to do with our children. The most important thing is for our children to be independent. So the first skill sets that we try to teach these children are skill sets required to live an independent life. Your daily living skills are as important as any other educational book and school curriculum that you have. So, daily living skills is one of the most important skills that we try to teach as therapists. And when these children are able to acquire that, there are many children who have spent a few years in centers, acquiring these skills, and are able to join mainstream schools with minimum support.
Wow, I am so glad to hear this. In many places, these intervention facilities might not be available, or parents may be aware of them but can't afford them. What advice would you give to them to help children?
So, you see, it is very difficult to access these kind of therapies, despite the country that you live in. Regardless of the country that you live in, it is quite difficult. These things are expensive, but um, it is also very, very important, especially if your child has been diagnosed at a very young age. Early intervention is something that we are all very, very, very specific about, and we try to encourage as much as possible that early intervention be the key to go, for your child to live an independent life. Because the earlier you intervene, the quicker the child is able to gain those skills. But yes, accessibility is a difficult thing. Luckily, the country that we live in thrives because of their interest in inclusion, and because they insist on inclusion. There are so many centers in the UAE who are really, really, really helpful and are open to having as many children as they can and just want to help. Uh, it is a lot more accessible in the UAE than it is in, let's say, India, where we are from. What I do, ABA therapy, as a field has just begun to grow in India. It's quite new, so not many people know about it. Uh, but since you have given me this platform, I think it would be a really great opportunity for me to just give a resource for parents who happen to come across this and don't know where to begin. There is a website called the BACD. They are the board that I'm registered with as a behavior technician. And when you go to the BACD website, all you have to do is put your current location, and it will give you a list of therapists that are registered under the BACD in your particular location. And I think as long as you are able to access one therapist, they will be able to give you access to any other resources and any other interventions that you might require.
Everyone can understand, especially in underdeveloped countries, it is quite challenging. However, we can all spread awareness so parents know where to start. So, what one message would you like to give to people about inclusion and more of the acceptance of children with special needs?
You know, like I already told you, there is no method for inclusion. It's simply acceptance. I know it's difficult. I know they are, especially for children like you, children your age, even for adults for that matter, it is quite difficult for them to understand when they see these children, view how these children behave. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, all of this begins at home. Acceptance begins at home. Um, you don't have to feel pity, but all you have to do is be accepting of everyone around you. This doesn't just apply for neurodivergent children or anyone else. It just applies for anybody, everybody. Acceptance as a whole is so, so important, and to just allow these children to be their best selves and to make sure that we are helping them do that. And the best way is to just see what they want, find out what their needs are, and try our best to fulfill those needs. But at the end of the day, just be accepting. They are just like you. Treat
Yeah.
them like you would anyone else.
Yeah, this is so wonderful, and anyone would agree that acceptance and inclusion is very important. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing so much wealth for information on autism intervention. I am sure it will help many schools and parents.
You're very, very welcome. I hope that this helped you, and it was so, so nice talking to you, Pragya.
Thank you, and I hope you had a nice time. Thank you, everybody, and bye.
Bye.